This is Sam Adams from Black Bedtime Stories. Your griotist here. Tonight's story is about Langston Hughes. Now, Langston Hughes was born James Mercer Langston Hughes, February 1, 1901. He was American poet, social activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist from Joplin, Missouri. Now, Hughes is famously known for being the leader of the Harlem Renaissance. Hughes became an amazing writer at an early age. While in grammar school in Lincoln, Hughes was elected class poet. Langston was raised mainly in Lawrence, Kansas by his grandmother, Mary Patterson Langston. Through the Black American oral traditions and drawings from the activist experience of her generation, Mary Langston instilled in her grandson a lasting sense of racial pride. He was encouraged by his grandmother with a duty to help his race. Hughes identified with neglected and downtrodden Black people all his life, and he glorified them in his work. He moved to New York City as a young man, where he began his career. He graduated from high school in Cleveland, Ohio, and soon began studies at Columbia University in New York City. Although he dropped out, he gained notice from New York publishers, first in the Crisis magazine, and then from book publishers, and became known as the creative part of the community in Harlem. He eventually graduated from Lincoln University. He joined the Omega Psi Phi fraternity there. Now, Thurgood Marshall, who later became an attorney, judge, and associate justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, was a classmate of Hughes during his undergraduate studies. After Hughes earned a BA degree from Lincoln University in 1929, he returned to New York City, where he lived in Harlem as his primary home for the remainder of his life. Now, in addition to poetry, Hughes wrote plays and short stories. He also published several nonfiction works. In 1942 to 1962, as the civil rights movement was getting huge in the United States, he wrote a deep weekly column in a leading Black newspaper, the Chicago Defender. In his 1940 autobiography, The Big C, he wrote, quote, "I was unhappy for a long time and very lonesome living with my grandmother. Then it was the books began to happen to me, and I began to believe in nothing but books and the wonderful world in books, where if people suffered, they suffered in a beautiful language," unquote. In 1925, as a personal assistant to historian Carter G. Woodson at the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, as the work demands started to limit his time for writing, Hughes quit the position to work as a busboy at the Wardman Park Hotel. Hughes' earlier work had been published in magazines and was about to be collected in his first book of poetry when he encountered poet Vachel Lindsay, with whom he shared some poems. Impressed, Lindsay published his discovery of a new Black poet. On May 22nd, 1967, Hughes died in New York City at the age of 66 from complications after surgery related to prostate cancer. His poetry and fiction never stopped portraying the lives of the working class Blacks in America. Lives he portrayed as full of struggle, joy, laughter, and music. Throughout his work is pride in the African American identity and its diverse culture. Langston Hughes, a Black American icon. Good night.